This is Half-Life 2's train station plaza. And here it is again. Alright, now let's go back to the previous one. And now the other one. Back, forward, back, forward. Now, what if I told you that these pictures are taken from a whole different client? What if I told you that one of these pictures is from a build released in, well, let's say 2010, and the other is from a newer 2015 build? To be more specific, this build is from Half-Life 2 Update, an engine conversion mod created by Philip Victor and released in, well, 2015. It puts improvements like higher resolution light maps, more skybox detail, better handling of cube maps, and some more graphical effects on the table without dropping performance too much. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal, right? Well, yeah, it is. However, most of these changes aren't very noticeable if you haven't spent every waking hour of your existence studying these maps and how detailed certain aspects are. I'm saying this because the casual player might not know what kind of things have changed between these builds. But hey, that's what I'm here for, right? I mean, it's not like this random space dude has anything better to do with his life. Well, actually I do, but I got some free time now and it's not much, so let's get going. So the first comparison I want to show you is this one right here at the beginning of the game. This is a perfect example of light map resolutions. In case you don't know what that is, light maps are loads of squares that cover world geometry, and the Source engine uses these squares to calculate the lighting. Some squares get darker than other squares. Of course, the more squares there are on a surface, the higher the resolution of the lighting becomes, giving you these nice and crispy shadows. However, Valve decided to use a lower square count in the original Half-Life 2 build in most cases, making the shadows of these pillars over here look dreadfully pixelated. This is one of the things that Half-Life 2 Update aims to improve on. If we switch between builds here, you can definitely notice that these shadows look way more realistic and crispy in contrast of whatever the heck this is supposed to represent. This improvement isn't just for this area. Philip actually updated most maps with new high-resolution light maps, making Half-Life 2's shadows great again. It's especially noticeable in the finer details, the details that were in most cases completely lacking in the original build's shadows. Now, this higher light map resolution does come with a price, mainly in file size of the maps. For example, D1 Train Station 2, the map I showed off first, is in the original game about 8 megs in size. But in Half-Life 2 Update, it's nearly 40 megabytes. This makes the total size of all the maps together at about 2.5 gigabytes. That is a huge difference from the original 900 megabytes that the original maps took up. Yeah, I know, lots of numbers. Yes. Let's go and take it easy with the numbers now, and let's take a look at some HDR changes. But first, here is Half-Life 2 Lost Coast, a single level Valve developed for demoing high dynamic range. And wet rocks. Look at how wet they seem. I'm playing this map for you because this is the best way to show off what HDR actually is. Oh, and Garry McTaggarts can probably tell you a little bit more about it than me.
With conventional rendering, seen here on the left, if something on the screen is 20% reflective, like the wet sand, then the maximum reflected brightness can only be 20% of the maximum brightness of your monitor. HDR's more accurate simulation of light ensures that the sun's reflection on this wet sand appears as it would in the real world, which could potentially use 100% of the maximum monitor brightness. HDR uses bloom to simulate light that is beyond 100% of a monitor's maximum brightness.
So knowing that, and having broken Lost Coast, let's go back to Half-Life 2 Update to check out these early maps. You see, the Steam build of Half-Life 2 does not support HDR maps up until Black Mesa East for some reason, but Half-Life 2 Update does support HDR for all maps. Some people dislike the brighter look of these maps, but I kind of like it. It makes the game look a little fancier in my opinion. Now, that isn't the only thing this version did. Philip also added more background details in the skyboxes of the maps. He added some new visual effects that were lacking from the original game, and some bugs that were in the original build have been fixed here. There is also community commentary from people like Pro Jared, Hdr Brutal Moose, and Ross Scott. Ross Scott. That alone is a reason to play, to be honest. So, on to the conclusion of this video. Is playing this version of the game actually recommended? Should you abandon regular old Half-Life 2 for Half-Life 2 Update? Well, it depends. Do you like newer Source Engine versions? Do you like the look of the episodes? Well, then yes, those are more than enough reasons to go give this a shot. Do you prefer a more true-to-release experience? Then stick with the original Steam version. But then you'll miss Ross Scott. I mean, come on, Ross Scott! And to be fair, the version of Half-Life 2 that you're playing isn't the originally released version anyway. That has to be the Source Engine 7 version. And it has fire that looks like this. Ew. 2D GIF fire. Anyway, in my opinion, this is the definitive version of Half-Life 2. Until they update it again. Which they may do. Please add cascading shadow maps. It'll be amazing. Oh, and God Rays, that'll be cool as well. Oh, and before I go, there is a brochure you can view on the official Steam store page that goes into more detail on what was changed. Like they predicted it might be difficult to make out, huh? But that would make this video useless then, right? But that means that the time I spent on it was also useless. Maybe I am useless. Or I just like comparing two games with each other so that I have a reason to use linear wipes. You decide.
Get